Hi, this is Mr. Fowles. We will now talk about New England colonies. Of course, we know that there are 13 original colonies, English colonies that is, but we are going to break them up into three parts and look at those parts individually. And the first part is the New England colonies, and we'll talk about which ones they are. And as we're talking, I want you to focus on freedom of religion and how freedom of religion really shaped this part of the country. So here's some bell work. It's a quote by a fellow named John Winthrop. "We must be knit together in this work. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, and rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together. For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are on us." And just what's the message of that quotation? What do you get from it? Personally, I think it's him saying that the group that's going to settle this new city has to work together to set a very good example, a good moral example. This is not a statement of profit. This is not a statement saying that we have to go and make a ton of money, but it's how we live our lives well together. So it's a very different way of thinking about communal living. So first we have to go back at England here and kind of give a snapshot history. There were some Protestants who weren't unhappy with the Church of England, and they fled to go practice religion as they saw fit. And first they went to Holland, and kind of hung out there for a while. Holland was a very tolerant society, but then they moved to America to try to kind of live the dream. So why do you think they went to Holland, which is also called the Netherlands? Why'd they go there first? There's no real. I mean, it's just closer. I mean, America might have been a great opportunity, but Holland was certainly closer. Okay, but then they came to America, and we called them pilgrims. And they came across the Atlantic on the Mayflower, which you may have heard of. And I can look here. This is the route. They went back to Great Britain for a second. And if you click on the map, if you go to the website and click on the map, you can get this really cool animation, but I'm not going to play it. But they moved here, and then here there was a big storm that cut in. So their original course was to go down here to Virginia, because they had contracted with the Virginia company to make a colony, but they were blown north here, and they didn't really ever make it back. So they stopped here at Newfoundland, and then eventually made it to Plymouth, which here is spelled with an I. This is from scholastic.com. I've only ever seen it spelled with a Y, but who knows? I've noticed I've been having trouble with that. So if you click on this in the real presentation, you get a cool animation. And that was the Mayflower, and they landed, and they settled at Plymouth, and they made the Thanksgiving story kind of begins here. They suffered at first. I don't think I have that. They suffered at first in a harsh winter, and a lot of them died. And then the local Native American tribes helped them out a lot. There was a fellow named Squanto who taught them how to plant native crops, and then they had the big first Thanksgiving. It's a bit of an American legend. But when they landed, they realized that they were no longer under the Virginia Charter because they weren't in the Virginia colony, so they made their own compact called the Mayflower Compact. And this is really important because it seemed, rather than just start the colony willy-nilly, they set out rules first. And how and why they did that is part and parcel to what I believe is the root of American culture, where self-governance is key and democracy is key, and a group of people making rules together is very important. So they settled here at Plymouth in 1620. Oh, excuse me. And that's that. And up here we're going to talk about this, but that's where they landed, Plymouth, and it's called Plymouth Rock. And then there were the Puritans, who came a little bit later. Whereas the Pilgrims wanted to separate from the Church of England, the Puritans wanted to fix it. But both groups wanted to do so in North America, which I'm not sure I personally see the logic in that. But the Puritans wanted to do it, and the bell work was from a Puritan leader here, this John Winthrop. This is on the boat of the Puritans coming over, and they established Boston. Boston here. 11 ships carrying 1,000 Puritans in 1629. So 10 years after the Pilgrims came over, the Puritans came over. But after, and we can get to look at the map again. So they came over and they landed in 1630, and then over the next 10 years, 20,000 Europeans came over, and that's called the Great Migration. So you can imagine all these people are coming over. They're gonna, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the Puritan way, the New England way, so they were very devoted, very conservative, and they had hard work, education, and government. This is very old school American stuff. And one modern day connection is that the city of Boston today still has one of the most educated populaces of any city in America. It's not the most educated, and this is in terms of just undergraduate degrees. I think if you look at terms of PhDs, it might be the most educated city in America, if not the world, I'm not sure. But for undergraduate degrees, 41.9% of Boston has a bachelor's degree or more. So we got 20,000 people jammed in to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and eventually you're going to have some dissent. A dissenter is somebody who disagrees. So there were some dissenters. This first fellow named Roger Williams, he thought the Puritans were too strict, and he differed. He insisted that the colonists could not take Native American land, that no one should be forced to attend church, that the Puritans could not impose their religious beliefs on others, and that the church and state should be separate. These were things that the Puritans did not believe in. They forced people to attend church. They imposed their religions on people, and they kept church and state very close together. So he was banished. He was sent out for his differing views, and he went and founded Rhode Island, kind of willy-nilly. And Hutchison followed him shortly thereafter. She was very outspoken as well, a very interesting person to study. I'm kind of sad we don't get to go and study her a bit deeply, but we kind of have to go over it. Her brother-in-law, John Wheelwright, he left. He wasn't banished. He left, and he started New Hampshire, and just another colony. By the way, Rhode Island, I want to drop that in there. Rhode Island, Roger Williams ended up starting a Baptist Church of America, so that the Baptists started in Rhode Island. And then last, we have this fellow named Thomas Hooker, who went to Connecticut to start another colony, and they wrote the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. So, and this is important because it gave non-church members voting rights. So it really put into stone the separation of church and state. So it's a very big deal. So we have Puritans, Pilgrims, the Baptists make a brief appearance here. We'll come back to this in a second. And then, well, we can look at this now. So here is a little something that you can talk about as a class. And that's kind of the idea of this. I don't really want to talk about it much. But there are two groups here. Groups for religious tolerance, including Roger Williams, the fellow right there, and groups against tolerance. We don't have anything. John Cotton is a very fun character to read up on. But if you want to pause the video and read these, kind of talk about it, which group might feel more at ease in modern American society and why, that is a Pandora's box of conversation that somebody can have. So, but then we got the Quakers, yet a new group who kind of came out of the woodwork, and they were very different. They did not believe in the Puritan hierarchy of that the ministers were elected by God. They believed that people had direct experiences with God, that there was no mediation necessary, and they believed that men and women were equal, and they allowed women to serve as ministers. Puritans didn't take kindly to this and banished them to various places, but then they would come back to preach, and then they were executed by Puritan governments. I didn't put this in the presentation, but I see a certain correlation in, there was a story about a Christian missionary from North Korea who left North Korea for her own safety, but then actually went back to preach, and I don't know what's happened to her since. Not much news gets out of North Korea, and but it was a very. You can look that up. So that's really the end of the notes for today. Um, that's essentially what we're getting at here. Is the influence of religion, and so I want you to think about Pilgrims, Puritans, and Quakers. And I want you to draw a 3-circle Venn diagram like I've done here, and label one of them Pilgrims, one of them Puritans, one of them Quakers, and in each intersection and each larger area, write how they are the same, how are they different. One way that they're all the same is that they're all Protestant denominations. So that's something that could go in the middle. None of them are Catholics, for example. So they're all Protestant. So that could go in the middle. And they all have colonies kind of dedicated to themselves. That can go in the middle. But which colony belongs to which would go out here. And I think you might find some similarities between Puritans and Pilgrims. And who knows? And that's for you to think about. And then, how did Massachusetts affect the development of New England is your journal entry, and there is your homework. And that is all. Side note, the Quakers actually still exist. They have a website, quaker.org, called the Religious Society of Friends. I found that very fascinating, that they're still there. All right, thank you very much, and goodbye.